On any construction site, there's a danger that's always present. It's not a piece of machinery, it's just gravity. Today, we're diving into OSHA's Subpart M. These are the rules designed to fight back against the #1 killer in construction: falls. Look, this isn't just about regulations. It's about making sure everyone gets home safe. Let's get right to it.
So, why all the focus on this one specific rule? Well, this quote from OSHA pretty much says it all. Falls aren't just one of the problems. They are the leading cause of death in the entire industry. This isn't some abstract risk. It's a daily, lethal threat that every single worker needs to be aware of.
And this number really drives it home. 1/3. Just let that sink in for a minute. For every 3 tragic deaths on a construction site, one of them is from a fall. That's exactly why Subpart M exists, and it's why every single detail we're about to cover is so incredibly important. Okay, so with stakes that high, OSHA drew a very clear line in the sand. This section is all about that fundamental rule, the one that tells you exactly when fall protection becomes mandatory. It's probably the first question you should be asking on any job.
It seems like a pretty simple question, right? But the answer actually has 2 really critical parts, and knowing them is the absolute foundation of fall safety. So when does the requirement officially kick in?
And here it is. This is the famous 6-foot rule. On the left, you've got the general standard. If you're working 6 feet or more above a lower level, you have to be protected. And why 6 feet? Well, that's the point where a fall can easily become fatal. But, and you've got to pay attention here, look at the right side. If you're working over dangerous equipment, that 6-foot rule goes right out the window. Any height becomes a deadly height, and protection is required. Period.
You know, before any work even gets started, the responsibility begins with the employer. Safety isn't something you just improvise. It has to start with a plan. First, they need to make sure the surface you're standing on is actually strong enough. Then, they apply that rule we just talked about. They select the right gear for the job, and critically, they make sure every single person knows how to use it.
All right, so you've identified a fall hazard. What's next? What do you do about it? Well, OSHA gives us a primary toolkit of what they call conventional systems. You can think of these as your go-to first line of defense. And here are the big 3. You've got guardrails, which are designed to prevent the fall from ever happening. You've got safety nets, which are there to catch you if you do fall, and you have personal fall arrest systems, which are designed to stop your fall in progress. Let's break down each one.
First up, the guardrail. It's often the simplest and, frankly, the safest solution because it's a passive system. That means you don't have to do anything to make it work. It's just there. It's a physical barrier that literally stops you from going over the edge.
But here's what's really important. A proper guardrail isn't just any old railing. OSHA is super specific here. The top rail has to be 42 inches high, give or take 3 inches. It has to be strong enough to withstand 200 pounds of force. And you've got to have midrails to prevent someone from slipping underneath. These details matter a lot.
Next in the toolkit is the safety net. Now, unlike a guardrail that prevents a fall from happening, a net is there to safely catch you after a fall has already started. Think of it as your second chance. And again, the details are critical. The net has to be as close to the work surface as possible, and never more than 30 feet below. There also has to be enough empty space underneath it so you don't hit the ground anyway. And crucially, it needs to be inspected every single week. A damaged net is no net at all.
And finally, we get to the most personal and active form of protection, the Personal Fall Arrest System, or PFAS. This is the harness and lanyard combo that you actually wear. It moves with you, and it's designed to stop your fall before you hit a lower level. So a PFAS always has 3 key parts, and it's easy to remember with the ABCs. A is for anchorage, that's the secure point you're tied off to. B is for the body harness you're wearing. And C is for the connectors that link the 2 together. And remember the golden rule. This entire system has to be inspected before every single use.
So we've covered the gear, the hardware. But you know, the best equipment in the world is completely useless if people don't know when, where, and how to use it. This is where the human element comes in, the plans and the training that actually make the system work.
Now, sometimes you might hear about something called a fall protection plan. It is so important to understand that this is an exception, not the first choice. An employer can only use one of these written plans if they can prove that using guardrails, nets, or a PFAS is either impossible or would actually be more dangerous.
And a plan isn't just a piece of paper. As you can see, it's a very structured document. It has to be prepared by a qualified person, it has to explain exactly why the normal systems can't be used, and it has to detail all the alternative procedures like safety monitors or controlled access zones.
I can't say this any clearer. Under OSHA's Subpart M, training isn't a suggestion. It's not a nice-to-have. It is a mandatory requirement. Every single worker who could be exposed to a fall hazard must be trained. There are no exceptions. And that training has to be thorough. It's not just about how to put on a harness. It's about recognizing hazards, knowing how to set up and inspect all the equipment correctly, understanding how all the systems work, and knowing the specific rules in Subpart M. At the end of the day, knowledge is just as vital as the equipment itself. So let's bring all of this together. We've got the rules, we've got the equipment, we've got the training. But to truly get rid of that one-third statistic we started with, it takes more than just checking boxes. It really requires a shift in mindset. If you remember anything from this explainer, make it these 3 things. 1. The 6-foot rule is your baseline, but dangerous equipment makes any height a fall hazard. 2. Know your toolkit, guardrails, nets, and PFAS. And 3. Remember that the best hardware is only effective when it's backed by solid planning and thorough training.
And that leaves us with this one last critical question. You see, compliance is about following the minimum rules to avoid a fine. But safety is a commitment to making sure everyone goes home at the end of the day. So take a look around your own workplace and ask yourself, are we just following the rules, or are we truly committed to being safe?
So what is this? 291? Well, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's how many construction workers died from falls to a lower level in just one recent year. And look, that's not just a statistic. That's 291 families changed forever. It's the number that proves without a doubt that falls are the leading cause of death in construction. But here's the thing. This isn't some unavoidable risk of the job. It's a preventable reality. And that is exactly why OSHA standards are so specific and so incredibly important to follow.
And this isn't a new problem. This quote from OSHA really drives it home. For as long as we've been keeping track, about 1/3 of all deaths in construction come from falls. This is the fundamental why behind every single rule we're about to get into. So, when does the danger officially kick in? When do you need to have protection? Well, OSHA has a very clear, non-negotiable answer, and it all boils down to one simple measurement.
And here it is, the 6-foot rule. This is really the bedrock principle of fall protection. If you are working 6 feet or more above a lower level, protection is not an option. It is absolutely mandatory. And hey, it's also really important to know this applies at lower heights too. If you happen to be working over dangerous equipment, like say open machinery or vats of chemicals.
Okay, so we've crossed that 6-foot threshold. We've identified a fall hazard. What do we do next? Well, OSHA doesn't just point out the problem. It gives us a toolkit with 3 primary approved solutions. So what are those options? Let's say you're standing on an unfinished floor. You're 6, maybe 7 feet up. What does OSHA require? Let's break down the big 3 systems. OSHA gives you 3 conventional systems to pick from. First up, you've got guardrail systems. The easiest way to think about these is like a passive barrier, kind of like a fence that just prevents you from going over the edge. Second, we have safety nets, which are designed to catch you if you do fall. And third, there are personal fall arrest systems. You'll hear them called PFS, and that's the equipment you actually wear that's designed to stop you mid-fall.
But listen, just having these systems on site isn't enough. Not even close. Each one has critical specifications. These are numbers you absolutely have to know to make sure they're compliant and that they're going to work when you need them most.
All right, first up, guardrails. They seem simple, right? But their effectiveness is all in the details. There are 2 key numbers every single person on site should be able to spot check in a second. The first number to burn into your memory is 42 inches. The top rail of that guardrail has to be 42 inches, give or take 3 inches, above the walking surface. Any lower, and you could just tumble right over it. Any higher, and you could slip underneath.
And the second number is 200 pounds. That top rail has to be able to withstand at least 200 pounds of force. That's basically the impact of a large person stumbling and falling against it. It can't fail. Now, what if guardrails just aren't practical for the job? Well, let's take a look at safety nets. Their whole job is to catch you, but their placement and their preparation, that's everything. For nets, the critical number you have to know is the installation distance. Safety nets have to be as close as possible to the working level, but, and this is a big one, never more than 30 feet below. Any further than that, and the fall itself could cause a serious injury, even if the net catches you.
And you can't just look at a net and assume it's safe. No way. Before anyone works above it, OSHA requires a drop test. This means dropping a 400-pound bag of sand into the net to make sure it holds. It is a mandatory proof of performance.
And finally, we have the most personal form of protection, the personal fall arrest system. This is your harness, your lanyard, your anchor point. It is your last line of defense. And the numbers here are all about managing some really immense forces. Let's start with the anchor point, the spot your whole system connects to. This is the foundation of your safety. For every single worker attached to it, that anchorage has to be able to support a staggering 5,000 pounds. To put that in perspective, that's about the weight of a small car.
Now, this is a really critical distinction. While the anchor holds 5,000 pounds, the system itself is actually engineered to limit the arresting force on your body to 1,800 pounds. This is an absolutely crucial safety feature that's designed to prevent severe internal injuries during a fall arrest. And this perfectly illustrates one of the most critical non-negotiable rules of fall arrest. Body belts, those simple straps that just go around your waist, are strictly forbidden for fall arrest. They concentrate all that force on your abdomen and can cause fatal injuries. Only a full body harness, which spreads that force across your thighs, your pelvis, and your chest, is ever acceptable. Period. So, we've covered the gear, the specs, the rules. But you know what? The best equipment in the entire world is completely useless if the person using it isn't prepared. Safety isn't just about hardware. It's about the human element. This is exactly why OSHA mandates comprehensive training. Every worker who could be exposed to a fall hazard has to be trained by a competent person. They need to know how to spot the dangers, how to properly use and inspect their own gear, and they need to understand their specific role in the site's overall fall protection plan. But what about the dangers lurking inside the worksite itself? In this explainer, we're going to dig into those overlooked hazards and talk about the one thing that's the ultimate safety net for every worker: solid, comprehensive training. So what are these other critical hazards? Well, the answer really boils down to two key areas that are just as deadly as an open edge, but honestly, they're often a lot less obvious. Let's break down exactly what every single person on a job site needs to be looking out for. All right, first up, let's talk about special hazards. We're focusing on two huge risks here: openings that you can fall through and objects that can fall on you. Take a good look at this number, 6 feet. According to OSHA, this is the magic number, the critical threshold. Any hole or opening a worker could possibly fall through, if that fall is 6 feet or more to a lower level, it has to be protected, period. There are absolutely no exceptions to this rule. Okay, so how do you protect these openings? Well, the solutions are actually pretty straightforward, and believe me, they are non-negotiable. You've got two options. Either you use a cover that can support at least twice the weight you'd ever expect on it, or you install a full guardrail system around it. It's got to be one or the other every single time. But here's the thing. The danger isn't just about you falling down. It's also about what could fall on someone else. Protecting your team working on the levels below is every bit as critical as protecting the folks working up high. The solution for this is really a 1-2 punch. First, hard hats. They are mandatory for everyone on site, no question. And second, to stop things from falling in the first place, OSHA requires toe boards on edges where tools, materials, you name it, could get kicked off. It's such a simple barrier, but it is an incredibly effective first line of defense. We can install all the guardrails, all the covers, and all the toe boards in the world, but it all points back to one essential truth. The best safety gear is completely worthless if the people using it don't know what they're doing. And that brings us from the physical gear to the all-important human element. Because let's be real, training isn't just some box you check off on a form. It is the ultimate form of protection. It's what empowers every single worker to be a safety advocate for themselves and for their entire crew. So, who's actually supposed to do this training? Well, OSHA is super clear about this. It has to be conducted by a competent person. Now, this isn't just some fancy title. This is someone who has the experience to spot a hazard and, this is the key part, has the authority to stop work right then and there to get it fixed. And what does this training actually need to cover? At the very least, every single worker needs to learn 3 things: how to spot fall hazards in the first place, how to use all the protection systems correctly, and So important. How to inspect their own gear before every single use.
And finally, and you really can't miss this part, just saying the training happened isn't good enough. The employer must keep a written certification record for every worker. This piece of paper is the official proof that shows who was trained, when they were trained, and by whom. It ensures everyone is accountable.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that safety is a whole system. It's about having the right gear for specific hazards, and then backing that up with certified training that truly empowers every single person on the job. Look, staying informed is one of the best ways to stay safe out there. For more deep dives into occupational safety, make sure you follow us and subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thanks so much for watching.